what happens is memorability is built through repeatability. And so random acts of content, even if ungated, will not have the impact that you want to have. And I looked at the conversion rates from full funnel from a demo request coming in. And I did the same for content leads, which were a gated content. I needed 25 demo requests to close one deal versus 100 content leads to close one deal. And you think about budget, resource, and that's not just resource on marketing, that's resource on sales to follow up on these leads as well. The math doesn't math. And very quickly it becomes an unscalable situation.
We've got investors. We need to show numbers. We need to show leads. How do you make the math?
The thing that really started to work was I just asked the C-suite and I asked people, well, how do you buy? Secondly, you know what's coming. You know you're going to get delivered in your inbox a PDF. Does that just stay in your inbox or does it stay on a desktop, never get read? And thirdly, you know you're then going to get cold called from an SDR and you'll be in a sequence. And how do you feel about that? And always the answer was no, no, no.
Okay, so how do you sell demand creation for a C-suite?
Well, so I don't know if you want me to go into the full, how did I do it at Cognism and the transition, or just generally? I mean, I can go very granular on
Both.
when we see it breaking it. Okay, well, let's start with very practically the Cognism example. So I was a full-on advocate of ebooks, gated content. I would say we're probably the best company at generating them at the best possible price. We got so good at doing that. And I even took Chris Walker on a podcast once about it and just challenged him on all of his beliefs. And I was that committed to the cause. And then, but then we got to another year at Cognism and another phase of growth. And I was doing the maths and I took the funnel into two parts and I had my declared intent demo requests. And I looked at the conversion rates from full funnel from, a demo request coming in all the way to close one. And I did the same for content leads, which were obviously all this gated content. And it was super stark. I needed 25 demo requests to close one deal versus 100 content leads to close one deal. And then on top of that, there was ACV decay on the content leads. So they were half the ACV size that the demo requests were. And so when you start doing all of this maths and you have this new target to look at for the next year, and you think about budget, resource, and that's not just resource on marketing, that's resource on sales to follow up on these leads as well. The math doesn't math. And very quickly it becomes an unscalable situation. And I knew that the first question I was going to ask once I presented this data was we'll just do more of the demo request thing. Surely that's what makes sense. So we'll just put it in a spreadsheet and say you're going to do, 100x of demo requests. And so it got me thinking, okay, well, I have to do that. That is the answer, but how am I going to do it in a way that's both scalable and repeatable? And for me, that came from the concept of building a truly engaging, authoritative content engine that acted like a media machine, was always on all the time to everyone in our ICP, delivering truly differentiated value. And that I couldn't do that and gate content that. Those two things didn't exist in the same world together. So I started showcasing the data and showing the inefficiency of the kind of old content way. At the same time, I surfaced sales didn't love calling content leads, to have them convert 1 in 100 times to close one revenue. They did not enjoy that. So I surfaced that feedback as well. And the thing that really started to work was I just asked the C-suite and I asked people, well, how do you buy? When you see an ebook, for example, you're like, gosh, yes, must give my personal details to that. And then you fill in the form. Do you actually first of all give all of your correct details, or do you just use some alias?
Random phone number or yeah.
Exactly. Secondly, you know what's coming. You know you're going to get delivered in your inbox a PDF. Does that just stay in your inbox or does it stay on a desktop, never get read? And thirdly, you know you're then going to get cold called from an SDR and you'll be in a sequence. And how do you feel about that? Does that give you a great feeling? Are you feeling more ready to buy their product or service? And always the answer was no, no, no. And so it's very hard for people to then kind of, I guess, go against the logic that really this isn't the reality of how we should be doing and consuming content. And yeah, so the maths plus the reality. And I think surfacing surfacing that actually sales are very aligned. Those were the three things that really helped generate buy-in for a fully kind of create demand content engine.
Okay, question. Okay, sounds good. I agree. Logics and math and everything. But we've got investors. We need to show numbers. We need to show leads. So how do you make the math math?
Yeah, this was always my argument to Chris Walker, and I found a way that this worked for us, which was like, we're not going cold turkey over here. We're not turning it all off overnight. No one can do that. So the way that I thought about it was mathematical problem, which was I'm going to turn down and turn off the most inefficient of my content campaigns. I'm going to repurpose that money and budget, and as well as also go with a begging tin to my CEO for a bit of experimental budget. And I'm going to say, I'm going to put together a hypothesis and a plan that shows how um, I will scale these direct demo requests in line with the spend that goes towards the ungated content in a way that fills that gap on the content lead side. So the thing that worked in my advantage was the crazily terrible conversion rates on content leads, because actually I didn't need that many more demo requests to fill that gap in terms of overall deals closed in the year. And by structuring it in a way where I turned down the dial on the most inefficient campaigns, and then I started out like ungating and turning up the volume on this whole new way of working, I soon had correlation graphs. It was within 2 months where I could show a correlation of a graph which was spend to demo request increase. And that was enough to continue to kind of get the buy-in to start dialing up, dialing down. And then it gets much more complicated than that as you scale for the next phase. Like as you're starting to put, hundreds of thousands every month into this ungated content engine and machine, you do need to get more sophisticated about it. You need to invest in some software. So there are tools out there like Fibbler, which really help on the LinkedIn ad side of things, if that's a cheaper solution. But we ended up with Dream Data, which can kind of help you across the board in terms of all of that buyer journey that happens before they're ever known to you, and then how that contributes into pipeline and revenue. And that helps you build those models which show how you can do this at scale predictably. Um, so yeah, it's a process where I would say at the beginning you walk and you think about incrementality, and then you invest in tech as and when you start to see those indicators of, you know, this is green shoots, this is happening, this is real. And the great thing is that now there is technology out there which will enable you to do that. And then final step, we were actually right in the midst of building our own proper marketing mix modeling kind of model essentially, which was going to help us determine to like the every single dollar where that next dollar would be best spent. Um, and that's super complex. That's a big project, but that's
Yeah.
that sort of 100 million plus mark where you're talking about that being a requirement.
Okay. So in terms of metrics, so you stopped tracking leads, but you started tracking conversion rate of the salespeople and this type of metrics, correct?
We didn't stop tracking leads. We still had two. We basically eradicated the second type of lead, which was a content lead.
Yeah.
All leads became the only kind of lead we got was a demo request. And then of demo
Mm,
requests, you were still scored. It wasn't just like, oh, all demo requests are
sure.
created equal. They were graded. So we had A, B, C's, and D's of those as well. And then, yes, conversion rates across the funnel. So from lead to meeting booked, meeting attended to opportunity, and then to close one revenue. And then obviously ACV of that closed one revenue as
Mm,
well.
sure. So in the spectrum of intent, let's say, so the intent of the lead, you stopped having low intent leads.
Yes. By the end of that
Yeah.
process, yeah.
Okay. 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 Um, I guess a lot of companies are seduced by the everything you said. Still, some people they fail at doing this pivot.
Yes.
Why? Why do you think they fail?
So, I think because it can be made to sound very simple, right? It's like, "Oh, you just don't get your content and then your demo requests go up." And then so people get their content and they expect their demo requests to go up, and that's not what I'm saying. I think there's a lot of nuance in it. So um yeah, it needs to be you need to have a strategy that is driving this idea of a create demand content engine or machine that you're building. So first and foremost, we sat down and we thought about, okay, we need to have topics that we want to be known for. That needs to be something that's just welded in everything that we do, because what happens is memorability is built through repeatability. And so random acts of content, even if ungated, will not have the impact that you want to have. And then second to this, which is just as important, is there are different levels of content or content buckets that we also need to make sure that we cover within our content production engine. Um, and those buckets, as I call them, were what we called thought leadership, which was essentially content that had nothing to do with our offering or service, but that was the news story of the day or the week or the month for our industry and our audiences. And we should be the company that consistently breaks that story in a way that's actually actionable, helpful, and useful to our audience. Then there was a content bucket, which was, okay, we do need to actually make sure people still know what we do. So, like, yeah, we can be an amazing thought leader in the space, but if people don't know what Cognism does, then we're also not going to be starting to generate more demand. So that content bucket was full of content which was dotted line back into the offering or service that we had. And what I mean by that was we were a B2B contact data provider. So us talking about topics around cold calling or yeah, any like objection handling, these types of those things were very much in that kind of content bucket sphere. Um, then you had this was a really important bucket, which was everything related to the product. So and what I mean by this is not your traditional product marketing content, not your one pages and your like your decks. This is, how does my product solve a problem for my audience? How can I show that? And can I show it in a way that's like interactive, engaging, ideally through the voice of a customer or a third party? And yeah, that's going to educate the audience. So that's a really important bucket. And then the final one is social proof. So coming up with lots of different ways in which we could validate that what we're saying is true based on the facts and opinions of others. That's not just us. So you need to have those layers of content covered. You need to have a thing you want to be known for clearly documented and understood. And then the final piece of it is like, how are you actually going to distribute all of this to your audience? So again, if you just ungate a PDF and put it on the website, no one knows it's there. So, like, they're not going to come and look for it. You need to think very hard about the distribution engine that's going to be behind all of this content. So you need to understand where your audience hangs out, how they want to engage with content, what formats work best for those channels. There's a lot that goes into the distribution piece, and that's obviously really, really important, and it varies by organization. So you've got authority, repeatability, and then levels and different types of content that all have to be thought about. And you'll probably do each one of those to a differing degree, better or worse than the other. And they need to continue to be optimized, measured, and improved upon. So I would say the other thing is like you cannot cheat quality. Like, just can't. That was always my bet, was like, we're never going to be as big as our competitors in terms of spend and budget and everything else. But what we can do is we can create truly authentically quality content that like an LLM can't write, and even now, or yeah, like our competitors can't do at their scale, because we're going out to the best in the industry and we're speaking to them and we're getting their insights and we're using that to drive that content. So people don't do that. And that is the other part.
Okay, thanks.